Amazing. Welcome to the podcast, Kaylyn. I am so excited to have you on.
Thank you. I'm so thrilled to be here and excited to dive on in.
Yes. So first off, why don't you share with my listener, how did you come to be this career coach in your life? Like, what experiences led up to that moment where you decided, you know what, I'm going to help other people find their careers?
So it is most definitely a long story, and it is not at all a linear path, as most are, and we are out here normalizing that. So my introduction to career services as a whole was my on-campus job in college. I was a student employee. I worked in the career office on campus as an office assistant, answering phones, scheduling appointments, but absorbing all of the information around me on resumes, on interviews, on networking. Been attending networking events since I was 18 through that connection and association. So naturally, for all of my friends and family, I became the go-to person to ask about resumes and job applications and college applications and things like that. So fast forward to graduate school, I held a higher level career assistantship where I was trained on one-on-one advising and large presentations on more in-depth topics related to job search support, finding our purpose, understanding that these career paths are not at all linear, and it's okay to take different steps at different times, contrary to what society may say. And then the pandemic struck. So in the midst of the Great Resignation, there was so much changing in the professional realm. I realized that I had a skill set that I could actually help people. I've always been drawn to experiences where I can take everything that I've learned and teach it in some capacity. So framing myself as a career coach was the perfect way to do it. Resumes was the foot in the door. And now I've shifted away from resume work and more towards career coaching so that we could dive into those crucial conversations, which is where I really get jazzed and excited. And that's where I can feel my clients start to come to life too, as they identify and give themselves credit for their strengths and their values. And then we work together on the logistic pieces to identify opportunities aligned with those strengths and values. So that is the long answer on the career side of that. But I also experienced a lot of my own kind of corporate trauma within the jobs that I held in between my degree programs and the impact that that held on me. A lot of distrust between people in the workplace, a lot of toxic masculinity in the workplace, and horrible power dynamics. So I found so much freedom and empowerment within entrepreneurship. So being able to offer this really impactful career coaching service as an entrepreneur, as my own lighthouse, without having to kind of abide by some of those corporate structures that were really becoming toxic and no longer serving me. It's the best of both worlds. And I feel so lucky that I get to do this.
Absolutely. I am on the same page totally. And I think you might have written a blog about this recently where, when you work full time and then you become an entrepreneur, it's like, it is so empowering to know that you have your own project and like your own way of supporting people, and you're not really tied to just a job. And I completely agree. Like, tell us about the toxic workplaces. Like, that's something that I have also experienced. And I think if anyone's really in the working world, it's like, toxic people create toxic organizations. So how did you find a way to navigate that? And I think with those kind of environments, like you were saying, toxic masculinity, distrust, like it really leads to burnout. So how did you navigate that in your own career?
That is a really good question. And I definitely experienced a very intense version of career workplace trauma in that I was assaulted by my supervisor.
Wow.
So I'm trusting this is a safe space. Thank you for creating the space for me to share that. But that really led me to an incredible journey of self-advocacy and understanding how to not only share my story, but to do it in an impactful way that felt very true and authentic to me and felt just. Meanwhile, I was working through a Title IX investigation, a legal investigation, a lot of intricacies there. I was really just trying to keep my head down and do my work because I thought that's what we do. I never had somebody told me to take a break and take time for healing. So, that event was really quite jarring, earth-shattering, and it woke me up to all of the red flags that had been in the workplace all along that had kind of led to this very large escalation, in which there was a lot of negative talk about women, about hookups, about higher ed happy hour and going out drinking with coworkers and using that kind of substance as an invitation to cross boundaries. And those are some red flags that I see in a lot of corporate culture, especially in cities where there is happy hour, where there is a drinking culture, where you can drinks and apps with friends after work. And it can seem so harmless, but if you tune into what those conversations are about, are you talking about the work? Are you talking about the world? Or are you talking about what somebody's body looks like? And how does that impact them? How does that impact you? So if you tune into some of those conversations, you can start to notice some of those red flags. Another huge red flag would be distrust in a supervisor, in a governing body. My Department of HR told me not to report my situation to the police, which you want HR to have your back. You want the place that you're working to feel like they'll take care of you in moments of trauma and of strife. And when they don't, it's time to leave. I stayed there for about 4 months longer than I would have liked. So I am very much an advocate for other people now to get out of a shitty situation, leave the behind. There's no obligation to stay there longer than you feel you have to. If it's draining your mental health, if you can't separate the boundaries between work and life, and it really starts to impact you physically as well, it's time to leave. And I will always advocate for that.
Oh my God. Yeah. I feel like that is a huge part of your purpose too. And even, in my work with you, it's like you are so, aware of those red flags and able to really like help and empower other people to say like, you can go, like you need to go and like have them spend less time. Cause I think that's happened to me in the past too, like staying longer than necessary, thinking it's going to get better, thinking you can fix things and realizing what you're responsible for, what your employer is responsible for, and just want to like celebrate you for going through that and being able to come on the other side and be so empowering to others. So thank you for so vulnerably sharing that. And I think that is what comes through in your essence and your power as a coach is like you've been there, and now you can help others. And I just got like chills as I was saying that, but I think that's really important because, I don't want to sound negative, but I do think that there are a lot of toxic workplaces. So like it becomes your job as a job seeker. And even like, I love saying the CEO of your career because it's really what it is. Like it's your, you have permission to walk away and set boundaries. It's really about boundaries always. And so I think that's really helpful for my listener to understand what the red flags are and like what kind of environment kind of these situations can happen, like where there is a lot of outside like fun social events, maybe like the lines get blurred a bit. So being aware of like your boundaries in those situations and getting clarity can be helpful. And now I'd love to talk about, you mentioned non-traditional career pathways and normalizing nonlinear successes and job hopping. Tell my listener about your setup that you got with like your digital nomad remote work life and how you were able to really allow that for yourself.
Yes. So it took a lot of trust in myself, which was new to me. I had to really get clear on my values, which had shifted over time, as they often do as we move through different chapters and events of life. I had to get clear on what I wanted out of not only my career, not only that tunnel vision of a career, but really open it up to understand what I wanted out of my life and understand how a career would help me meet those goals, instead of focusing everything on the dream job, the ideal situation, what's the best work environment. And I think that in doing so, I realized how much I valued remote work, especially after the pandemic when it became more common, more frequent. And the last company that I worked for full time required everyone to go back to office in person, basically overnight. And I realized how much I valued remote work, how safe I felt physically in my body in remote work, how competent I felt being able to wake up and do everything I needed to do on my own time from wherever I wanted to in the world. Yes. So I left that job in July of 2021 and focused full time on my business, which was scary as hell, But within the first month of doing so, I packed up my laptop and went to Costa Rica for 2 months and worked remotely from there. Now, part of my time in Costa Rica was designated for a deep level of personal healing, which I think was incredibly well-deserved after years of difficult work and the investigation logistics and so on and so forth. So I was able to prioritize healing for me on my own time, as well as determine the kind of work that I wanted to do, which is career coaching. So I held career coaching appointments from Airbnbs, like right on the beach, from the rainforest, from the inner city. And that flexibility has empowered me to want to do this work more. It's helped maintain my levels of motivation as an entrepreneur to be able to offer these services, to listen to my clients and hear, what do they need? What is going on in the job market right now? How are interviews being shortened, and how can we get our point across faster so we can all feel empowered in what we're doing, whether we're working for ourselves or someone else? And I think that working for ourselves is definitely the non-traditional path. And you can tell by the way that our parents may or may not respond to it. As successful as my business is, I often hear like, oh, but don't you still want a real job? Don't you want benefits? And on some days I do, but most days I wouldn't give up what I'm doing for the world. And I think that by really showing up authentically in these spaces, which is something I admire so much about you, Emily, in your work and your podcast and your book, is really showing up authentically in these spaces and making life what we want it to be, deciding what energy we want to allow ourselves to interact with, and setting those healthy boundaries, just like you said. And whether that's traditional or not, I think it's up for us to decide.
Yes. I love that so much. Yeah, you really created your life first, and then you made your career fit into that. And I think that's really empowering for my listener to hear, for me to hear. It's like our values do change, and giving yourself permission to do what feels right for you. And I also feel like you were saying those qualities of remote work that maybe people don't think about, like that feeling of safety you have in your body, and like that feeling of competency. I love that. Like knowing that you have that autonomy, and that you're going to do your work and you're going to work on your business. I think those things are really valued now. And as you've seen in the last few years, like the future of work is very much changed, and it is very much going to be very personal to each person, like what they value. And I love that you went to Costa Rica and you went on this like amazing, it sounded like you shared with me this like healing retreat of like all of these different kind of embodiment practices, right? Like elemental work and I forget, there were many other things, but it was like you came home to yourself, you showed yourself that this lifestyle is possible. And I think that is very inspiring for my listener as well. And what would you say, this is like my question for you, that's something I think come to terms with in the last few months. It's like, should we normalize job hopping like every 2 years? Like, should we just like accept that that's the reality? Because I'm starting to think like, I think I still had that mindset of like, oh, you want to like build legacy and like have this long tenure at a company. But is that actually shooting yourself in the foot? And are you leaving so much on the table by doing that? I'd love to hear your thoughts.
I have so many thoughts. So I'll start with some statistics for funsies. The average baby boomer spends 10 plus years in a job. Average Gen X is 7 years, more or less. The average millennial is 4 to 5 years, and the average Gen Z is 1 to 2 years. So I think that we are in the process of normalizing job hopping. And I think we have embraced the concept of learning and earning in a really empowered way, where it's like we are all well equipped to do any job coming out of school, especially if we follow the narrative of going to college and getting a degree and advancing our knowledge and even just our communication styles throughout that experience. We can learn anything, and to be able to do so on the job, if a company is going to pay you to do it, why wouldn't you jump ship from a place that's no longer valuing you for your work or making you do the work of 3 people and underpaying you, when you could find another opportunity, learn something new, and continue to grow your skill set, just like they've been telling us to do, the societal,
Yeah.
for as long as we can remember. And I think that I'm a classic job hopper. I change jobs about once a year, historically, if you look at my resume. And while that can seem scary to someone to put in writing on a resume, and we worry who's going to think poorly of us, it's older generations that are going to think poorly of us for job hopping. And as more members of Gen Z and as more millennials get into higher positions of leadership power, I think the stigma around job hopping will disseminate to an appropriate level where we can just open the conversation to, why did you leave one opportunity? What's attracting you about this opportunity? Like, what information exchange and exchange of skills and knowledge and interest are we going for here? And come to more of a mutual agreement versus the idea of us as employees working for an employer and giving them everything that we have and going above and beyond. And that's what leads to burnout. And I also think that relates to the idea that we feel like we owe our employer something. Like, we have to be so grateful to have this job because the job search is rough and it is exhausting. And we do feel grateful when it comes to an end, but we also start to internalize some of the issues with the system as issues with ourselves. Like, because no one is hiring now doesn't mean they're not hiring you because something's wrong with you. Just because you didn't get one specific position doesn't mean you're not good enough. It probably just was not the position that was meant for you. And you probably felt it in your body and in your voice in the interview. And I'm sure it came across subconsciously, whether you knew it or not. So I think taking our power back in that sense and recognizing that we don't actually owe our employers anything. They are doing their job by providing us with a job and time off and benefits and the workplace culture and community that goes with it in exchange for the work. It is reciprocal. And I think we forget that too often.
Oh my gosh, Kaylyn, this is so good. This is so good. Yeah, it's like we're working within the confines of the system. And I think it's exactly like you said, like we go in there with our skill sets, our goals, and then we get to a point where it's like, okay, like I've provided so much, like here's like what I'm, expecting as a pay bump. And like that doesn't happen. Then you get more work because they see you as competent and they're like, great, like this is great. We can just keep adding more. And it's like, I think that hopefully will change too. But in the meantime, like you have to be the one to kind of shift your mindset and go somewhere else. And I'm a full believer that, you're never going to miss what's meant for you. So if you feel like a job interview didn't go well, and like I think you and I have talked about this too, where you kind of know in the interview where you're like, I'm not even like acting like myself and like I'm saying things that like I normally don't say. And it's like that's your own higher self saying, like trying to get you out of there. And I truly believe that like you were saying, I think it already is sort of normalized, like especially in some industries like sales, they're like expecting you to leave after a year or two. So hopefully that's more of a shift to other industries and like we can just let go of that I think you said boomer mindset of like, you have to stay as long as possible, because I think that really does limit you. Because myself, I'm like very much someone that loves variety and like I'm a generalist, and like I have to be constantly like learning and like constantly getting new things. And like when I get into routine work and like then it just becomes repetitive, like I just go crazy. And so I think a lot of people are like that. And it's like it's better for you sometimes, like all the time actually, to leave to get that, like you were saying, new skills, new knowledge. And yeah. And what is your human design profile number?
I don't know my profile number, but I know that I'm a projector.
You're a projector. Okay, that's right. So you're like the expert of different subjects, like you were saying, and that's how you can point people in the right direction. I think let me know when you find out your profile number, because I think for me, I've realized I'm a 5-1 and I'm all about like investigating. And so when I'm in a role and I know it's not right for me, I'm not seen as the expert anymore. And that's how I know something's out of alignment, because it's like I'm only the expert when I'm investigating. So this is an invitation to my listener too to check out your human design. I've had some episodes on that too with Bree Rubin. And figure out what your profile is. I think that can be helpful if you're we always get to that stage of questioning, should I stay? Should I go? And that can be a helpful prompt to figure that out. Do you have any suggestions when people are, mulling it over and thinking like, should I go? I think so many people get stuck in that. And then a year goes by and they're like still in the same job, and I'm always like, never let me be in that spot where like I just am always like, I'm also like very mentally focused. So we've talked about our astrology signs. Like I'm very air, and I do have one earth sign, my moon, but like I can get so stuck in my mind and like constantly just in the mulling over part if I'm not aware of it. And I've definitely gotten so much better at that. But like, what are your suggestions if people are questioning, should they stay, should they go?
I have quite a few ideas. And I, too, my astrology big three, I'm all fire and air. I am very much in my head in the clouds. And if I don't verbally process all of my thoughts to somebody else, I'm going to get lost in my own little tornado of a brain. So I think that either having these conversations, whether with an expert, a trusted friend, a feminine embodiment coach, whoever you feel is really going to take the space to listen to you actively and help you not even determine what direction to go in, but just reflect your own thoughts back to you, because you'll hear them a little differently and you'll have a better sense of your intuition of what you're really drawn towards. You can also notice the difference in what decision you want to make based on your body language. I saw a really great video last year on TikTok of a girl who recorded herself trying to decide between two jobs. And one of them was lower pay, but she was so excited about it. And she was talking with her hands and smiling and flipping her hair. Like she looked like she was thriving, compared to a video where she was like, well, then there's the realistic choice. This is the job that feels safe that my parents want me to take, that I can do. I would be okay, but I don't want to. And her whole body just fell so flat in that discussion. And you can't always see what you look like when you're talking through these things. So again, that's another great reason to bring in a sounding board, bring in another member to the boardroom and see what comes up for you there. I also love a good old pro and cons list. It's helpful.
Yeah.
Clients, and I think putting things down on paper can be just as impactful, if not sometimes more so, than verbally processing these decisions.
Ooh, that is gold. I love those three different things because they're all about yeah, expressing, like you were saying, like sharing those thoughts out loud. And that's actually one of my strategies as a reflector, is like talk through all my decisions, because I'll get reflected back. And it's not even like you were saying to get advice, but like to hear like how it's sounding when you share. And also to feel in your body, like your physicality of like, I will say, like, what feels logical, your brain's gonna wanna be like, "We should do that." And I even just went through this experience that I'll share more about soon, but you and I have talked about it, where it was, like, questioning whether to leave a job or not, and, like, logically, it was like, "Stay." Like, it was like, "You don't wanna do that, like, that doesn't make any sense." And then in my body, though, like you were saying, is, like, very heavy. And so tuning into that pros and cons list as well can help you really see everything on paper that's going through your mind. So I like all those because they're all about expressing it and getting out. I think getting support too is so important, and getting insight from someone who's been there can help you manage it. Like, do not be talking about, like, sometimes you can talk about it with a friend, but when it becomes like repetitive and it's like you're just venting at that point, it's like your friend's not a coach, like, unless they are, but like they're not in like coach mode for you, like you need to find your own resources. So I think that is really, really powerful in navigating that question. I think right now we're in a time where many people are like, I'm not dealing with this bullshit anymore, and they're getting clear on their values. And so we've talked about some of our different ways of figuring out our values, but I'd love to hear your insight on, like, how do you manifest a career that's aligned with your strengths and values, and bring it out into reality?
That's my favorite question. So again, here, putting those manifestations on paper is so powerful. Like, your pen, as you write it, is literally creating magic on the page. And that is the first step in bringing it from your heart, from your mind, from your body, from your spirit into the universe. You're like extracting it onto the paper for it to live, for you to read it back to you, for you to feel your hands over it, for you to play with it with different senses and help introduce it to the universe. So that way the universe can deliver. You've got to know what you want so you can ask for it. And I think that gratitude and mindset work is a huge component of this. Now, I don't say that because it's something that's come easy to me, right? It's a practice for a reason. It takes time, it takes effort to develop. And what's been really helpful for me has been starting a gratitude journal and building that into my morning routine. So I don't always stick to my morning routine. I don't always get outside for the walk that I want to, but I do always write down 3 things that I'm grateful for, big or small. It can be, I'm grateful for the pen I'm writing with because it's so smooth. It can be, I'm grateful for the home that I live in and feeling stable for the first time, maybe ever, which is obviously a bit bigger than the pen writing. But those are just some examples to get into the abundance mindset, to recognize what you already have and to not come at your manifestation from a scarcity mindset and feeling like you're never going to get it, you don't deserve it for some reason. We've got to kind of set those negative thoughts aside and really focus on manifesting what's in front of us, using positive self-talk and calling in the things that we want. And for me, that gratitude practice is essential to the manifestation practice. They really go hand in hand. So once we kind of shift that mindset, we're ready to visualize not only what do we want, but how do we want to feel once we've accomplished what we want? How do we feel in our bodies? Do we feel relieved? Do we feel excited? Do we feel nervous still? And when I manifest and I write down what I'm calling to me, I write in the present or the past tense about the future. So it's definitely separate from my regular journal, or I would get very confused between all my verb tenses. But it has really helped build confidence too. You start to feel proud of yourself as if that's already happened. I wrote in my journal, I am happy and healthy and wealthy every day for 3 months. And I genuinely feel happy for the first time in years. So I think there's something to it. You know, I think it's got to actually work to some extent. And even if it's just a placebo, I deeply believe in it. And that self-belief is going to be what carries us through. And imagine if the universe delivers on top of that self-belief. It's a win-win situation.
It truly is. Yeah. I remember we met up recently for coffee and you were like, I'm really happy. Like you created this, like yourself through your intentions, through the journaling and through the visualization piece. I think that's the part that's so important, like acting as if and like living it out, because then you're just normalizing it for yourself. If you're always thinking of it like, oh, that's going to happen sometime in the future, like then you're just kind of in that scarcity place because you don't have it yet. So you're still just like thinking, where is it? So I love that. I couldn't agree more. I have so many journals and it's funny, like you were saying, I have so much resistance to journaling and it's like, I don't know what that's about. That's a whole other conversation, but like I've got my journal out again and I was actually just journaling before this. I'm manifesting a few different things and I look through my old journals, I keep them because it's like everything I write in there like does come true. Like, and I think letting go of what it'll look like, it's just like that's the part with the universe that you were saying, like that's that sense of trust that you know what you want is coming. And I love, 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 love how you tie that into career. Because that's how I've manifested like all my roles and like even in business too. So I love that. And what are your other tools? Because I think you have some other like very spiritual tools that you use maybe to help with intuition. Do you have any other recommendations?
Yes, definitely. So manifestation is my biggest one. And I do career coaching specifically around manifestation, but I also do career coaching specifically using astrology to help us gain insight into ourselves, our strengths, and our life path. So I've teamed up with an astrologer named Val. You can follow her on Instagram at Starside Astro. And her and I will read the astrology chart together of somebody and look for specific career themes, different house placements, different planetary placements, just to help recognize what makes sense for you in your career thus far and what directions could you take it in. So for me personally, I am a Leo sun, Libra moon, Leo rising. And since I have so much Leo placement, I really do like to be in the spotlight. And as an entrepreneur, it's me, myself, and I running the show. So that's a good fit for me. I also really love teaching, which is very much an onstage performance and sharing of knowledge. Then through my Libra moon, I've learned how much it is important for my emotional needs to be communicated in a way that feels balanced and grounded, but also through something a little whimsical. I like to communicate through writing, through music, through dance. And that understanding has helped me recognize why I'm in the line of work that I'm in, and also how to continue to improve and learn and express myself in different ways, because there's always more to learn. There's always things to improve upon. So looking to the astrology chart has been really helpful and fun to do in that process and to walk other people through as well. I also have a large crystal collection. So for the first time, I have all of my crystals in one place. So I like to say good morning to them. I welcome the elements into my space. I'll light a candle for fire. I light like incense or sage, or ring a bell for wind. I have a lavender like body mist spray for water. And then I pick a crystal of the day essentially as earth. And it usually represents what I'm called to, what I need a little bit more of in my life, and how can I sit with that energy and welcome it in, even if it's something that I might be resisting, the way that you are resisting journaling right now, but you know that it's needed. So using some of these different tools, letting your subconscious mind guide you, and diving intentionally into deeper practices and research of self-discovery can be so fruitful and, again, so fun. And I just think we deserve to take the time to do that.
Yes, we do. I think, like you were saying, the job search can be, it can be very stressful, and like there's so much uncertainty, and there's a huge level of like trust that needs to go into it, and like work, and to have these tools that are really reinforcing clarity and support. Like everything is made up of energy, and all those tools are actually supporting you. And I love, 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 love the astrology approach. You are my go-to referral for astrology coaching and career, because I used to offer, when clients started with me, like, let's look at your chart. Again, I have very basic understanding, and that helps to a certain point, but like to have the full knowledge of an astrologer and like point you to the specifics of your chart to help you with your career is so, so valuable. And helps you understand yourself and where your strengths lie. And I think that's the piece that's so validating as well. And your Leo fire comes through so much. Like you are such a force to be reckoned with. And I think that's the piece that like people need in career coaching. Like normally when you come for career coaching, it's like you're in a space of uncertainty, a lot of self-doubt, a lot of different options, confusion, and like you come through with your fire, and it's like very clarifying. And as well as with the air too, I relate with my Libra rising of like wanting to express myself, and in my business even like sell in a very like whimsical way, and like I love the movement piece and music, like you were saying. So I think, once you understand that for your career, that is huge. And those other tools you share too, like crystals, I think like you find alignment that way. Like that's how um you reinforce in the physical what you are creating internally. So I think that approach is so needed in career coaching. And I am in a similar way supporting from a feminine embodiment perspective. But I would love to hear your insight of, how our stories and our strengths can be supported with career coaching.
Absolutely. So I think that too often the magic, the intuition, the manifestation, these conversations are separate from career coaching. And it seems that within the world of careers and job searching, we really have to put on a blazer and make ourselves smaller to fit into society's definition of what's professional. So I think we also get the chance to redefine what does being professional mean for us, and how can we blend our intuitive power with bringing a fulfilling career into fruition. And especially as women, we have so much intuitive power, and we shut it down too often in these office settings. And I don't think that we deserve to do that. I think that by gaining grounding energy, by gaining intuition, they say that your intuition will start as a whisper and it will turn into a scream if you don't listen. So your inner voice is always there. You always know what's right. And it's often just clouded by societal expectations, family expectations. Sometimes there's a lot to sift through. And I think it makes so much more sense to tap into our natural power to bring that intuition into fruition so that we can actually hear ourselves, listen to ourselves, and take that aligned action, kind of block out the rest. I think that they've been separate for too long, and that engaging in these practices to increase our intuition, to really listen to ourselves, to turn inward and just listen to our bodies and our hearts and our minds of what we need. We have so many of the answers within us already, and we spend a long time searching externally when we don't need to. So by marrying the two kind of fields of thought, fields of practice a bit more, I believe we could take aligned action that much faster and have that much more of a positive impact on our lives for longer.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah. I think that is the key. The societal conditioning, those unspoken rules are never going to go away. What I've learned recently is like that's a key cause of like imposter syndrome. It's because there's all these so-called rules and we're always going to be bumping up against them. So it's almost like a necessity to confirm our own, validate ourselves and listen to our own voice, because we're always going to have that like chatter in the background. And I was like, whoa, that like blew my mind of like, this is why we're disconnected from our intuition and why we seek to the outside, because the outside acts like it has all the answers, but it's like, this is just what we've done in the past. And I think we're at an exciting time where paradigms are shifting and the old is crumbling. And I really do believe that we're going to make that shift into more intuitive um, based living that you're talking about. And I also want to call out your strengths in how you approach career coaching as like, you're also a language expert, right? Like you teach Spanish. And I think something that you shared with me that blew my mind was like, business and career is like a language, and you just need to understand that to to make it work for you. And I feel like that's what is stopping a lot of people, or thinking it's creating, I guess, disconnect where people are like, okay, what do I say in this situation, or what do I how do I express something in the language? And I think people can feel so intimidated. So I'd love to share any if you have any insight or advice that you share with clients about navigating the business world and the language piece.
I love that question. I love language so deeply. I've always been attracted to it. And I've studied Spanish for 14 years and I do love teaching it. Another stage in which I can learn and then share something immediately to people who are interested. And I just started to notice patterns in career language, especially in job postings. And one of the biggest resume writing tips is to use the language of the job posting in your own document. It's really just understanding how to frame your experience through the words that they are using to help translate, to help bridge that language gap, and to help prove to future employers that you already have everything they're looking for. They just need to hear it in a way that they can understand. So it is an interesting journey to strike the balance between showing up authentically and communicating from our hearts and applying to these opportunities with our hearts and being in a bit more of a vulnerable space, while also understanding the language that is being used in front of you and how to absorb it and produce it in a way that also feels authentic, in a way that you feel heard, you feel understood, and the message is coming across as well. So that's another case where writing has been hugely helpful, whether it is the process of the nitty-gritty of writing the resume and learning how to communicate your experience through these different lenses. It's like putting a different hat on each of your different experiences. It's just giving it a different accent, really. It's really just a different dialect to communicate. But being able to do so saves a lot of time and improves your own communicative abilities, which is a marketing point all in itself, and being a communicator. But it's really helping people understand you in a way that you want to be understood, in a way that they need to understand you in order to hire you, to give you a job, work with you effectively. So I think that embracing that linguistic diversity of the career space and understanding just really what things mean, what's asked of you, and not being afraid to ask questions either. We love clarifying questions. We love the opportunity to learn more, and employers love to see that in you, because then they think that you'll want to continue or to learn more with them and continue working with them and continue learning to communicate in that language together.
Oh, so much goodness there. Yeah, I think curiosity is huge in showing that you are passionate, that you're engaged, and that that you have positive intent and like you want to learn more. I think that just really shows that. And the piece that you're saying, I think it's just like once you just normalize it, okay, this is their language and this is how I can leverage it so that I can share my value and make that connection. Because I am truly of the belief that, and this has helped me like manifest a lot of different jobs in the past. It's like knowing that a company is searching for someone exactly like you, and you are searching for a company that like there's that match. So the more that you can show up authentically and then effectively communicate the value, the company that is looking for exactly that can find you better. So it's like a win-win situation. And I can vouch for your resume support. I found it hugely helpful. You supported me in a session recently, and it was very empowering because you went through my resume, but you gave suggestions and like helped me take what I think, what they say, take what works, leave the rest. And, but you taught me the tools and like what they're looking for and what would stand out. And then I can go, and this is a great tip that you shared, to each resume, each job application, like tailor it with the language of that application and put that different hat on. And that, yes, is an extra step of effort that I also had resistance to, because I'm like, why am I doing that work? And it's like for that reason that you're saying, to actually make that connection and make it easier for them, the company, to see your skill set. So I thought that was incredible once I put that connection together. And I have to say, I'm also a huge fan of languages. I've recently been getting back into French. I mean, I speak French fluently, but like I don't speak it so often. And then I've been watching Emily in Paris, and then I was watching something else where they spoke a lot of French. I think on HBO Max, The Staircase, like there's like a French piece, and it's like listening to that, like I think that like broadens your mindset and perspective and like how you approach problems too. So I love that you have one foot in the language space, one in the career, one in like the mystical, and it's like those are all different languages that you are bringing and empowering your clients with. So that is so powerful, and I would love to hear from you, Kaylyn. What is your call to action for my listener today?
Yes, absolutely. I love the opportunity to work with new people. I'm currently taking on new clients, and I designed a new career coaching package specifically with the intent of bringing more of the manifestation and the mystical into practice. So the first of 3 coaching appointments focuses on an evaluation. What's going right? What's going wrong? Why do we need the change? How are we feeling? And really establishing that safe space to dive into the good stuff, right? To get into the conversation, to spill the tea, to open up, to be vulnerable, and to identify what we need to do. Then in appointment 2, we visualize, we think about what a day in the life of the ideal job will look like. What will it feel like? Are we working from home? Are we working in an office with a great community? Are we walking downtown to get to our office? Are we walking by the beach to get to our Airbnb to work from home for the day? Asking all those questions about the lifestyle truly, and seeing how work fits into it, and really building out that manifestation practice through a career lens for my clients. Then the third appointment in that sense is an action plan. It's combining the mystical, the logistical, and putting it on paper to take the next right step forward. And that next right step will shift and it will evolve. Just like I said, our values will shift and evolve as we move through the different chapters of life, and our career should too. So I invite everyone to investigate the offer called Careers by Design so that you can design the career that you want and deserve. But also come follow along on Instagram at AOK Resumes, where I share career coaching tips, empowerment advice, all the fun stuff, and just like to build community and support other female entrepreneurs. And also you can find AOK Resumes on TikTok, as well as aokresumes.com for more information on additional services and practices.
Amazing, amazing. That will all be linked in the notes as well. And I love your Instagram. Your reels are amazing. And like you're saying, so valuable. So thank you, Kaylyn, for the work that you do. You are so inspiring and so empowering. And people that are looking for their career that fits their lifestyle need you in their corner, and you bring the practical with the mystical and empower people to speak the language of business and career and find what truly lights them up. So Thank you for the work that you do. And thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Thank you for the work that you do. Thank you for having me. Thank you for creating the space for me to share my experience and hopefully inspire some people along the way.
Yes, you're so welcome. Thank you, Kaylyn.